Oh, hey, what's going on, guys? Just doing a little bit of routine maintenance on the old Parajet Maverick. Checking the spark plug, which is something we all have to do frequently. I started adding seafoam to my gas about 5 gallons ago, and I've seen a noticeable difference in carbon buildup. Take a look at this plug. It's looking pretty good, actually. In the past, I've noticed a lot of carbon buildup on my plug. Of course, we have to change the settings on lean or rich, and I've done all that, but I still would consistently get carbon buildup. Now, my head and the piston head see a lot of carbon buildup. Every 20, 30 hours, I'd have to pull that out, clean it all off. It was a headache, so I'm hoping the seafoam makes a little bit of a difference. Now, I know this is a long-awaited video. You guys are anxious to find out more information on this guy right here. Sadly, I have yet to fly it. I've had this thing put together. It's ready to go. The battery's charged. I even added my reserve. I just got my new strobe, the same one that I use on this, and I can't fly it. Tennessee is traditionally a great place to live and a great place to fly. This is the longest I've ever been grounded due to weather. We've had thunderstorms. We actually had tornado warnings and watches this past week. We've had snow. We actually had 3 inches of snow just the other day. The winds have just been crazy. Today, it's sleeting out. Temperatures are just below 30 degrees. I don't know what to tell you. But what this does is it opens up a window for me to do a little bit of a comparison between a gas motor and the electric motor. Why buy this? Why buy that? Is it best to have both? Let's figure that out. Stay tuned. Okay, a valid question could be, why am I doing this video? I'm a fairly new pilot. I've only been flying for a couple years. I've got about 155 hours on this guy right here. 0 on that as of yet. Now, this is my second motor. I've done all the maintenance myself. My first motor lasted me about 87 hours, and then I started having some issues. Now, that particular motor had never run really solid. It traditionally took 5 to 6 pulls to get it to start. A lot of adjustments needed to be done along the way. I wasn't extremely happy with that. I also wanted a dual start motor. So after doing a lot of maintenance within the 87 hours of use on that last one, I purchased a dual start, swapped them out, hooked it all up, figured out how to do the dual start setup, and this thing's been running great ever since. Very happy with it. So I have a pretty basic to moderate knowledge on how these motors work and the general maintenance we need to do. Now, this side of things is much easier, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk about today, the pros and cons to both sides. Now, my experience with electric motors is that I've got a 2014 Chevrolet Volt, which is an electric car that also has a gas generator that charges the batteries as well as provides the electrical current to run the electric motor when the batteries are depleted. So it's kind of a cool car, and I've learned a lot about that car and the technology behind it. I've also got a 2015 Chevrolet Spark that I've used for work for the last 3 years. I've got the Sur-Ron, which is an electric motorcycle, and then I've got 3 bicycles that are electric bikes as well. My daughters have 2, and I have 1. So I have a pretty good understanding on how electric motors work and the pros and the cons of having one. So let's get started. Now, one of the solid benefits of having a gas motor is reliability. If you take care of your motor, they are pretty reliable. Now, this Moster 185, the dual start that I've had, has been impeccable. It's great. It has not left me stranded. It has yet to die on me. I did have an issue with the dual start. I had to replace the motor once, but outside of that, the motor itself has always run great. Now, I wouldn't say that about my last one, but I think there was some kind of an issue from the beginning with that one. Now, most of us have a gas motor. This is new technology. I'd say a year from now, we're going to see maybe a little bit bigger split between gas and electric. Right now, the Moster 185 is, I would say, the most popular paramotor motor. There are a lot of options out there. I don't know a lot about some of the other motors, the Nitro or the Polini. They are interesting, and I've done a little bit of research, but this is really the only motor I know of and have worked on and have a basic understanding of. Now, one of the advantages of being a new pilot and learning the sport right now is that we're coming into an era of kind of tried and true. The technology has been tested for many, many years. Those of you who have been pilots for 10 or 20 years, you've kind of gone through the headaches of reliability. Now I feel like a motor like this, and most motors, are fairly reliable. You can trust them. Now I will say my first motor was not the most reliable. It did leave me stranded. I think I had 3 or 4 motor outs within the first year. But that thing never really ran great from the beginning. It traditionally took the 6 to 8 pulls to get it started. When it did run, it wasn't always nice and clean. This new dual start, I think because I bought it brand new, I did the proper break-in procedure. I've always used the perfect gas mixture. I think the fact that I've done all the maintenance and taken care of it from the beginning is why I haven't had any headaches with this. Now, of course, I've only got about 60 hours on this so far, so knock on wood. Now, focusing in on the pros of this, parts are plentiful. There's a lot of places to buy parts for these. Traditionally, I've never had to wait more than 2 days to get a part in the mail. So when I have a problem, I know that that can be fixed within a couple days as long as I can diagnose that problem pretty quickly. Now, another advantage a gas power motor has over the electric, at least at this point, is distance and time of flight. I've got a 10-liter tank and I can get about 1.5 to 2 hours out of that. I know there's some people out there who can go 2 to 3 hours on that much gas. It really depends on what you're flying, your weight, and all that information. But for the most part, this is still double, if not triple, what that motor can do. Now, one of the things I have to point out is gas burning power. There's a lot of guys and girls out there who would not want an electric motor because you miss out on that, right? Hearing that idle, that rumble. When you hit the gas, it gets louder, that engine revs up. You got that exhaust smell. Now, I'm not going to argue with that. One of my favorite cars I had was a 96 Corvette Grand Sport. And you got in that car, and when you started that thing up, the rumble, the big V8, and then you'd smell that sulfur in the exhaust. It just kind of connected you to that car, and you knew what you were driving. You knew what that car was capable of based off of the sounds and the smells and all those feelings. An electric vehicle is something much different. Now, granted, it can produce the same power, if not more power, and it's a really cool experience, but it does take away some of that thing that we've all kind of ingrained in our heads at what power is. And that is sound, that is the feeling, the vibrations of the motor, and the exhaust and the smell. So that's definitely an advantage we'll always have with a gas-powered paramotor. Now, the last advantage I want to point out is not going to be applicable to everybody, but some of us like to work on motors. I particularly do not like to work on a motor that is giving me problems, but I do like to do the maintenance, and I like to make sure that it continues to run well. After my West trip, I was gone for a couple weeks, and I got back, and I knew my motor would need a little bit of work. So it was kind of fun to take an afternoon and take the head off and clean everything out, change all the filters, put a new plug on it, test my fuel lines, make sure everything's working good. I enjoy that process, like I said, when things are going good. What I don't like is when my motor is not running right, and no matter what I do, it continues to have problems. Or when it stalls on me and I can't troubleshoot why it's stalling on me. That kind of maintenance I'm not a big fan of. But there's definitely some pride that comes in taking good care of your machine, and when it runs well, you know it's because of the work that you put into it. All right, let's move on to the SP140. The first thing I want to talk about is reliability. And I know I mentioned reliability when we're talking about the Moster 185. That's reliable just because it's tried and true. The reason this is reliable is because there's far less moving parts. An electric motor is simple. We've got the motor itself, we've got a little processor and a battery, right? There's just a few connections connecting the 3 of them together, and that's how it runs. When we think about the Moster, we've got spark plugs, we've got fuel lines, everything has to be sealed up correctly. We've got a carburetor, we've got, if our gas isn't good, if we've got an exhaust issue, if our airbox goes flying off. There's a lot more things that can go wrong with this unit. So reliability is great when it's working and in comparison to other motors, but you really can't beat the reliability of an electric motor. Now, as I've mentioned, I've got a lot of experience with electric vehicles. I have yet to have any problem with any electrical motor, vehicle, bike, dirt bike. They always work. You hop in the car, you start it up, and it just works. That can't be said for my gas motorized vehicles or motorcycle or paramotor. So we have to recognize that there's definitely advantages when we're thinking about electric. What it comes down to is that your battery is your fuel source. Just like this gas tank is holding your fuel source. That's what's creating energy. Now, gas prices are about $3 a gallon, okay? So a gallon of gas in a Moster 185 will get you almost an hour of flight time, which is pretty impressive, right? An hour of flight time on this SP140 is going to cost you about $1 to $1.40. So yes, there's definitely an advantage when it comes to efficiency. It's costing you far less to run this for an hour, but you only get that much time and then you have to recharge it. Now in my particular situation, I've got solar panels on my home and I've got batteries and I run most of my home and everything I need off of that system. So I'm able to charge this and it doesn't cost me anything. But even not costing me anything, this battery is about $1,600 for an hour of flight time. Obviously it can be charged many times, but it's going to take a long time to recoup the cost of $3 a gallon to run through this. So the efficiency of this is far better, right? It's renewable, we can keep recharging it, keep reusing it. It's generating power over and over and over again. Now the weight is the bigger issue, right? So a gallon of gas, right? Think about a milk jug of gas, that weighs about 6 pounds, all right? So we can get a lot of power out of 6 pounds of energy. The same amount of energy in this battery is 5 to 6 times that weight. That's pretty significant. Now, like I said at the start of the video, why are we going to buy either of these, right? Most of us will own one of these because that's the standard. That's what we all know, we understand. The amount of flight time you get, even though I think there's some statistic out there that most flights are under an hour, right? This is what we know, and this is what's most common. There's a lot of different motor options, a lot of different frame options, so we just know that. This is all new technology, and it's going to get better, right? If we think back to the early stages of the paramotor, probably back in the late 90s, compared to now, look how much more advanced it is, how much more reliable, how much the quality of the materials is better, the longevity of the motor is better. So we have to think that this is the starting point of electric. It's going to get better. Now, why would you buy this over that? If you're the type of pilot who is going to fly less than an hour, you basically just want to buzz up and run through the clouds or hit the fields in the evenings or the mornings and then be done with it. So basically you get to come back home, put it up against the wall, plug it in, and charge it up for the next flight. You don't have to worry about gas, you don't have to worry about oil, you don't have to worry about carburetor adjustments, you don't have to worry about spark plugs, you don't have to worry about cleaning an air filter. The simplicity of owning something like this is as easy as it gets. Now you have to make the sacrifice if you don't get the flight time with it, right? But to be honest, they weigh about the same. So it's not like you're getting a lot less weight with this, they weigh almost equal. So all you're getting is the conveniences and the sacrifice is less flight time. So who is this going to go to? This is going to go to the paramotor pilot who wants to fly more, right? Who doesn't want to have an issue with a battery and they can't fly, or they want to fly longer with their buddies and they're having to be grounded after 45 minutes. This is the standard. This is what is kind of expected, right? You have to learn a little bit about motors. You have to have basic understanding on the mechanics of how this system works and how to keep it running efficiently. You're going to have to replace parts at some point. At some point, you're going to have to replace an entire engine, right? So you have to really commit to, it's more than just flying this machine. You actually have to become like a small engines mechanic as well, unless you know somebody who can take care of that for you. So there's a little bit more responsibility and obligation that comes with owning something like this. But the advantage is you get to fly more. And I think that's the trade-off. It really depends on what you're wanting out of this experience, out of this sport. Now, for my particular situation, having both is perfect. And the only reason I have two paramotors at all is I started looking at another one when I kept having problems with my old engine. I got to the point where I'm like, I don't want to be grounded for 7 days to a week because I have to wait for parts to come in and I have to make the time to fix it. And I don't even know 100% if it's going to be fixed at that point, okay? So I thought it'd be nice to have a second paramotor. So I always had something that was running well. So if I had an issue with one, I could fly the other one. Now, I was originally looking at a Scout, I looked at the flat top, I looked at a few different options, and back when I started looking, the SP140 was a couple months out. I was able to get on the list to order one, and I thought, hey, this could be the perfect solution. Now granted, if something is wrong with this one, I have some limits with this one, but at least I can still fly it, okay? The other advantage of having this machine and this machine is that for my quick flights in the evening, when I just want to buzz around or just kind of get out and play for a little bit, I don't have to add wear and tear to this. And that's one of the advantages of having an electric car. If you have an electric car, you know it starts easy. There's hardly any wear and tear. There's not a lot of moving parts. So when I just need to run some errands, get some groceries, pick the kids up from school, why would I take my truck where I have to start it up and burn gas and I'm adding miles to that motor when I can just hop in the electric car and it's easy to drive. I can just buzz around, run my errands, and come home. So really the last thing we want to talk about is durability. And not necessarily of the motor, but let's talk about the frame. Now let me give you my advice as a semi-experienced pilot. I would not buy this unit if I'm just coming into the sport, if it's my first time flying. And it's not about the reliability of the motor, it's not about the battery, it's not about any of that stuff, it's about the frame. This frame, to me, would not hold up in a significant crash, even a minor crash. This frame has proven to me that it will hold up in a crash. I have probably biffed it 4 or 5 times on this thing, and 2 of them were pretty hard. One of them bent the frame pretty significantly on the bottom, and I was able to brace it and crank it back into position again. It's a titanium frame, so that doesn't mean it's not going to bend, but you can readjust it as needed. It's not even round anymore. It actually has an oblong shape to it because of the times I've tweaked it. It's held up extremely well though. So you're going to probably crash a few times as a new pilot, so it wouldn't make sense to get something like this that you're going to break things very easily. You're going to have to be ordering new spars and chunks of the hoop. It's just not worth that. Even in a situation of a butt landing on this thing, I would have some genuine concerns about the durability of that. I've come in on my butt a couple times on this one, and I've never had any issue with that frame. So find a good solid frame if you're a new pilot, because you're going to ding it up quite a bit. Okay guys, that's really my spiel on the pros and the cons of both of these. I know some of you probably just want to skip over this stuff anyway because it doesn't mean much to you, but hopefully it has some value to some people. The last thing I want to bring up is the size difference between the two of these. Now keep in mind on these platforms that I built, this one here that the SP140 is on is about 1 inch higher than the other one. So even with that, taking that inch off, you can see the height difference between the two of these. The hoop on the SP140 is significant. This is a big hoop. The prop on here is massive. This is a 140 centimeter prop. It is thick and meaty. It reminds me of a prop that would be on the front of an airplane. Now I like the 3-blade prop, and I've got a 3-blade on my Moster as well. This is a 130 centimeter prop, which is even a little bit bigger than the 3-blade a lot of people put on. But this thing looks tiny in comparison to that SP140 prop. So whether that's a factor or not, when you're buying a paramotor, do you want something that's super big and it's gonna get in the way and be bulky? This thing is nice and compact. Pros and cons, right? Now what I've heard about this motor from reading up on it is that it has no limits on torque. So for this particular motor, it has limits on the size of a prop you can put on it, because it can only put out so much torque, and it's gonna cause excessive wear and tear to the motor if you're asking it to do more. Okay? This motor apparently does not have limits. So you could actually put a larger prop, you could put a bigger hoop. They talk about setting it up on a trike, you could do tandems. Now of course the more you add to it, the less efficiency you're going to get out of the system, right? It's going to pull more juice from that battery, that's going to be less flight time. But it's kind of cool knowing that that motor has that capability. As battery technology gets better, hey, who knows, we might be getting a lot longer flight time. Because honestly, I was thinking this would be kind of cool to set up on a trike at some point, and even if you had 1 or 2 more batteries, obviously a trike you can hold an extra person, so technically you could add in a 12 kilowatt system and have pretty significant flight time. So who knows what's in store? There's a lot of things that we could be seeing down the road. Hopefully you guys found this interesting. The next section is going to be me actually flying this unit, and I'm stoked to do that. I wish I could do it right now, but I can hear the rain and the sleet outside banging against the garage. We need some good weather.